Technologies, and I would like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with host is our very good friend Jordan. He is their key strategic account manager, and he's presenting. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box so that Jordan can answer them at the end of today's presentation. Jordan, welcome back. Thank you very much for being with us. Looking forward to what you have to share with us today. I'm very excited about it and happy to have you with us again. So please go ahead and take it on over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Julia. It's great to always have the opportunity to present with Microcom and all the good stuff that comes with it. Good morning, everybody, and thank you guys for taking the time out of the day to learn more about NETGEAR. I've done quite a few of these presentations, and so we're getting to some good stuff here where we're mixing some things up. And if you've been to one of my presentations before, you're going to kind of see things a little bit differently. You know, one thing I want to point out right out of the gate, many people are still not quite yet aware, but NETGEAR, we have updated our brand and our logo and basically how we do business. This is our new logo, and we're really incorporating the NETGEAR enterprise into really just our brand. And that's because NETGEAR has concluded that while we oftentimes we find ourselves competing in the SME, the small to medium enterprise space, we definitely are able to compete as far as the performance, reliability, and support goes, more of the enterprise grade. And so we really are the best bang for the buck. You get the enterprise grade reliability, support, and hardware capabilities all at the more of the SMB kind of focus. So that's the great thing that NETGEAR is going. So you're going to kind of see this conversation about the enterprise moving forward in pretty much every single presentation that we do, and all over that you'll see NETGEAR. You're going to start seeing more and more of the NETGEAR enterprise. So if you see that logo, that's not a new company. That's just NETGEAR elevating our status to where we know we should be playing in. But today, guys, we're going to be talking about our smart switches, or our plus switches. They're kind of in a few terms. Easy smart is another term. We're kind of figuring out that exact coin of how we want to term the business, but you know, right now plus switches are what's always has been, and is kind of still sticking for now. But that's what we're going to talk about today. And these plus switches are really great, and they really meet a very wide variety of businesses' needs that we're going to talk about. You know, they're really designed to empower businesses without really overwhelming complexity. You know, think of them as a perfect middle ground for, you know, businesses who want more control than just an unmanaged switch, but they don't want the cost or complexity of like a fully managed switch, like, you know, those other enterprise solutions. So that's where NETGEAR really fits and shines with these switches. So let's get into it. What is a plus switch? You know, so these switches are really ideal for connecting edge devices, right? Things like IP phones and cameras and access points, all those IoT devices that are connecting onto a network. This is a great use for it because they offer features like VLAN capability and traffic prioritization like QoS and PoE. You know, all of those stuff are in a simple and very intuitive interface through the local web GUI. And you know, for you resellers out there, this means fewer support calls, you know, faster deployments, overall just happier customers. For those customers who would be using something like this, it just means product that's just going to run and work, and you're going to have the reliability and the feature sets that you want to have and that your network needs. So as we kind of break down into those features that we just had mentioned, you know, VLAN support. We all, you know, a lot of us should know what the VLAN is, but it's basically where we're able to segment traffic for both a security and a performance aspect. You know, this is really perfect for businesses that want to separate, you know, your guest Wi-Fi from an internal system, and this supports that capability. You know, then you have things like QoS or quality of service. And this is where basically you can prioritize voice and video traffic, so you know, calls and meetings really stay crystal clear. Port mirroring. Another great feature, but this is just a troubleshooting, most commonly used for troubleshooting. It's a way that we can troubleshoot issues quickly without really expensive tools. And again, there's the this PoE, especially the uninterruptible PoE, meaning that these devices are going to stay powered on even during updates, which is critical for devices like cameras and phones. And so these features are really easy to explain and to sell. They solve real pain points for the SMEs. Security, performance, and reliability are what most businesses need, and these fit that very well. Let's talk about the good old PoE. PoE is a huge selling point for these switches, and simply put, because it eliminates the need for those separate power supplies for devices like those cameras and our access points. Things that our switches offer that are good to note is, we've got a good range of switches that have all different amounts of PoE budget. Things from like 62 watts all the way up to 123, and even more so depending on port count. So they were able to support a wide variety of high-powered devices, both in PoE and PoE plus. And then we also have what's called active PoE. This is something that is really important that not a lot of people may take into consideration when buying something that needs to be powered. There are other competitors out there that offer two things. It's comparative to passive PoE. So the difference between active PoE and passive PoE. Active PoE is an implementation where there's essentially a handshake or an agreement between the devices that are being connected. So let's say I connect my switch, a NETGEAR switch, to a VoIP phone, right? As soon as that connection gets made, there's a handshake. There's basically a communication that talks, and basically the switch asks the device, hey, do you need power? And the device says, yes, I need power. And the device will say, how much power do you need? And the device will say, I need 12 watts or 5 watts. I'll say, great. And the switch will say, I'm able to give that amount of wattage. Here you go. And that's different than passive PoE. Passive PoE is basically what it sounds like. It just passes the PoE whether it needs it or not. It's going to give it to you. There's really no handshake there. And you can imagine what kind of implications that has when you have a device that doesn't need power. It already is plugged into a power source and it's getting even more power through the data connection, and it doesn't need it. And they can do some really bad things, wreak havoc on the device and really hurt the longevity of whatever device that it is that you're connecting it to. We do see, I work with a lot of resellers, and one thing that gets mentioned with the PoE phones is they always make sure that was a stipulation whenever they're going to sell out their Polycom phones or whatever brand that they sell the VoIP phones. They always make sure that whatever switch is connected to it needs to have an active PoE, because if it's passive PoE, violates warranties and doesn't make, because it doesn't last as long as it typically would if it was being used with an active PoE versus passive. So something very important that we do, always keep that in mind. The next thing here, so here's just a few really popular models that I just want to include. Of course, we have so many of our plus switches here, but these are really the bread and butter, if you will. These switches, we've got these 5 and 8 port switches. These are all going to be gigabit switches. Just so you know, if you see multiple P's in the name, that just means it's a PoE plus switch, which means that each port is capable of doing up to 30 watts of power. Now, depending on the budget, for example, although this is a 5 port up to 30 watts, well, if you were to do all 30, that's 150, but unfortunately it can do 120, so you can do 4 ports at all 30 watts if needed. And if you need more, we obviously offer more power budgets, and if you need less, you'll see like a single P. And then we've got even multi-gig, right? Multi-gig is becoming more and more popular. And the cost is really coming down a lot. A lot of businesses are implementing multi-gig, not necessarily for the use because they don't have the need now. It's starting to get the need, but it really future-proofs them and sets them up for future networking and future products that's going to be coming in, because the cost is relatively low now with multi-gig. It's no longer the latest and greatest. Obviously, they have faster, but PoE with the multi-gig is now coming on almost to what gig used to be, 5 years ago. So really some great things that are really popular with that NETGEAR sells quite a good amount of. Now let's talk management. So as we mentioned that these do have the management capability, these are all going to be able to be managed through the local web GUI and through also, like, you can go through the mobile GUI if you want to as well. The management isn't as much as you would expect with like between like a fully managed switch, but that's okay because that's not the use case, right? These are specifically used to do those very crucial and important things like VLANs and QoS and PoE. That covers a lot of businesses, the needs of most businesses. And so this has those capabilities. And without making it a very complex configuration, this is what the web GUI essentially looks like. It might be getting a bit of a facelift, but I'm making it look a little bit prettier as it goes from our old logo, to our new logo and new kind of color scheme. But essentially, the capabilities are still going to be the same with these switches, being able to do the VLANs and QoS and those types of things. And guys, and you don't even have to use these configurations if you don't want to. These switches are very much a plug and play. These switches, you just plug them in and plug them into whatever device, and they're going to work. You don't need to worry about setting up a VLAN if that's something that's not you don't need. But if you do, very user friendly, very simple. You don't need to, you don't need to have your CCIE to be able to configure this. So super simple. One thing that I love to also highlight too is our reliability and our performance on these switches. We want to make sure with these switches that you're really getting the performance that you need, even out of a simple plus switch that, an edge device, some that wouldn't say is super network critical or mission critical, but it's still you just want still as much of the reliability as you do with your core. And that's what we do with these switches. We oftentimes, most of our switches are going to have even greater speed that it's able to cover the entire bandwidth and then some. So as for example, on this one, like 16 gigabytes on an 8-port switch, that's able to be in that multi-gig. Even if this was a 1 gig, you got 16 gigabytes of total bandwidth. Making sure that this is non-blocking, there's no interference, there's no bottleneck happening inside these switches. This is what you would want to have, and even on an edge switch. These guys are really very cost effective on the savings. It's not going to increase the energy bill a whole lot. A lot of these are fanless and quiet, and again, you're not going to be getting high energy bills because of it. And then these guys just run, right? I mean, gosh, I can't tell you the amount of times of pictures and feedback and images that I see of some of these switches are just caked and covered in dust and dirt and everything that you can imagine is just covered, and it is still running. It's kind of why I like to put this little Forrest Gump here right here, that it just runs and runs and runs. It's so much so that we look at the average MTBF, which if you don't know what that means, it means mean time between failures, meaning what's the likelihood of that you're going to get a port failure on a switch. And some of them are just crazy. We averaging 132 years. Some are more, some are less. But on these switches, I feel like most of them are going to be more than 50 years are going to be between failures. These just run and they work. It's an easy selling point to just say, let's just grab these. This is going to last. When you buy this switch, it's kind of like, this will probably still be working even when this business maybe has been long gone. 132 years. So super fantastic lifetime of these switches. Now, one thing I want to talk about here too, NETGEAR always aims to be, right? When it comes time to choosing NETGEAR, we're not the only ones who offer these low port count or these very light management switches. There are a lot of manufacturers out there who do the same. But NETGEAR has some things that we always want to make sure that we're achieving, and if you've heard some of my presentations before, it follows a similar suit. We always want to be reliable, and we want to be affordable, easy to use. We just want to be that trusted brand that is going to work and is just going to run forever. And it's not something that you're going to have to worry about. You put it in and it runs. It's why a lot of the use cases, a lot of these switches are heavily used for across all different platforms, even enterprise grade platforms such as like retail and hospitality. Powering cameras and their POS systems, credit card machines. Healthcare is able to connect medical devices because a lot of these, even in are unmanaged switches, where they have such small management capabilities that it's basically, they can make it a dumb switch, if you will, or an unmanaged switch. It doesn't need to have all the complexity of like with HIPAA and stuff like that. Great with education. being able to do like smart boards and Wi-Fi access points. Another big thing that these are really popular too is the industrial manufacturing, heavily used in machines and equipment. I know a lot of our switches go into a lot of slot machines that you might find in Las Vegas. Something that you may or may not be aware of, but there are a lot of those slot machines. I've personally worked with products and on projects with our partners who sold to these casino gaming machines and would throw in our switches into those. And needing those to be up and running and making sure that those are reliable. I mean, that's what Vegas is definitely crucial on, is making sure that their products are up and running and working 24/7, and they trust a lot of these casinos and gaming manufacturers. They trust NETGEAR to be putting them in there. And of course, it goes without saying, these of course are great in their home offices and in SMBs. I myself am using one of these switches here. I've got about 3 computers that are just in my office, a personal work, and then I've got a little server computer, and those are all connected to one of these switches. So they work great in the home office. Just a very wide variety of useful applications, and they're all choosing NETGEAR because we meet those needs. We're the affordability, we're able to be reliable, and we're able to also scale, right? I mean, you saw that the non-blocking 16 gigabytes versus on an 8-port switch. We've got room to grow and even more stuff to throw in, and you can really throw some stuff at it. So with that being said, I believe that's pretty much it for my presentation there. Julie, back to you. Maybe there might be some questions that came in during the chat. I'll try to answer them to my best ability, with knowing that I'm more in the sales account management, not necessarily in engineering, but I'll do my very best.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And yes, we've got some questions here for you. Let's get started with the first one. Here we go. What kind of security features are integrated in the Plus switch lineup?
Yeah, so your security is really going to be more on the firewall aspect. These are just your simple Plus switches. So I would not be necessarily focused on or wondering about the security. The security should be more on the core or inside the as it gets into the device. Obviously, though, some security is going to be the VLAN aspect. You can separate that and have that separate. Traffic would be as much security, if you will, if you want to call it security, as being able to segment the traffic on these switches. But that's about it.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question here. Can Plus switches be stacked or virtually linked for centralized control?
Another great question, and the answer is no, that these cannot. They're again, as little edge devices, they're not meant to fit that play. NETGEAR does have product that are stackable, or being able to do a virtual stacking, via that, whether that's either in the cloud or through a local web GUI. But we do have those products, just not these smart or these little Plus switches. It's more going to be in the smart or fully managed. That's when you're getting into your layer 2 plus or layer 3 switches.
Thank you so much for that. Next question. Do these switches support dual firmware for safer upgrades?
Do these switches support dual firmware? Is that what that question was?
Yes, and then it goes on to end up at for safer upgrades.
Highly unlikely. I don't believe so. I can't confidently give that 100%, but I would be surprised if it did. I know on our layer 2 plus or our layer 3 light switches, our fully managed switches, they do have the ability to have, revert to the previous versions. But with a Plus switch, I'm going to probably say confidently no, that these would not.
Okay. Okay, next question here. Can you tell us what industries benefit the most from the Plus managed switches?
Gosh, I mean, every every single industry can benefit in some way, shape, or form. I feel like that there's really, it'd be hard pressed to find some sort of company out there that does not have some sort of small port edge switch. Could be under a desk. It could be, you may not find it in the core rack, but you definitely will find a lot of these in all aspects. And I kind of touched on some of those, like the retail and education, industrial, those type of things are really, really big. So all aspects.
Excellent. That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. Couple more questions here left to go. Next one, here we go. How does NETGEAR plan to compete with emerging Wi-Fi 7 and next gen wired networking demands?
We're already there. I mean, we've already got Wi-Fi 7 and access points, and we've got our product. That's why we're doing the multi-gig capability, as we see next generation throughput needing multi-gig. Most access points now, if you're even with the Wi-Fi 6 and especially into Wi-Fi 7, are going to require multi-gig or more. And so that's absolutely why our switches have the capability of being not only multi-gig, but also even more so. We've got unmanaged switches that can do, and plus switches that can do 10 gig and even in switches that can even do even more. So we are definitely on the forefront and leading that charge with the diverse amount of switches that we've got. We've got it. It may not necessarily always be in the plus switch category. Plus switch category meets a very fine and unique market, but when it comes time to next technology like the access points and wireless, you can be rest assured that these will make sure that they fit and have that capability of making sure that they've got the power capability and the speed capability.
Excellent, thank you. We could always count on NETGEAR for being really on the cutting edge here. That's fantastic. Couple more questions left here. What innovations can we expect in the next generation of plus or smart switches? Hopefully that's not terribly redundant, but if you could touch on that, that would be great.
Yeah, it's a good question, because there's obviously a line of demand, right? You wouldn't be expecting like an unmanaged switch. You wouldn't expect to say what type of innovation or how much is going to be thrown at this, because it's not meant to. It's not designed to. And so really I think the question would be to ask is really, is NETGEAR making sure that they're on the forefront of those kind of things? And the answer is yes, absolutely, especially on our smart switches, our fully managed switches. That's the layer 2 plus, layer 3 light. There are a lot of things, especially with AI going to be integrated, but with the plus switches, we want to keep them very simple, and adding additional things like AI and adding those type of features just kind of makes it a little bit more complex, and you soon start losing what really makes these plus switches great, are these simple, very limited, very core centric features. You want to keep it there, because that's what most companies still need and demand, and they may not want to go that aspect. So I would say that these switches are probably going to still stay with its capabilities. It's not going to see any drastic improvement or craziness of it, because they're not designed to, and the market doesn't want these switches. They want very basic, basic managed switches, nothing else that makes it too complex. If they want to go more complex, we absolutely will, but that's the market that these are for.
Excellent, thank you. Last question, Jordan, can you give us an overview with the latest with AI in respect to what NETGEAR is doing with it? Is that something you could address?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, I got to be careful with what I say and what I share.
Of course.
There is a lot of talk and discussion and work on implementing AI into our products and into our management capability with these products. So while I can't say too much about what it's gonna be, I can say that for certain NETGEAR is working on some really great and awesome things that I am super excited about when I see these get these fully released, of how AI is going to be integrated into our products and into the networking realm as a whole. AI is going to be changing the name of some games. So definitely want to keep an eye out on NETGEAR for the probably the next, I don't as things kind of come out, I don't know exactly when they're going to come out, but 2026 is going to be a really great year, and it's going to be very fun and exciting with all the things that are coming down the pipe. So just be on the seat and keep joining these webinars, because that's probably where you'll hear from it very, very quickly when we do the announcement. You can rest assured that we'll probably put together a webinar with with Microcom and do some announcements and do some fun stuff. So be on the lookout. It's coming.
Thank you, Jordan. That sounds very exciting, especially since 2026 is just around the corner. I want to get a January, February, or both, webinar date with you, and we'll see what things are at that time and what you can tell us at that time. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise.
Excellent. Thank you for answering all of those questions for us. And also thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. And if anyone has any further questions, of course, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of the products mentioned or shown today, please remember that this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so we can all view it again. Thank you, Jordan, for your time, and looking forward to the next one with you. I'll keep in touch. Everybody have a fantastic day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.